I thank the gentleman. I did want to continue this thread, Mr. Jorjani, about the Trump Ethics Pledge, which could not be more clear in a very important area of distinction. That is the distinction between former clients, which are defined, lawyers, consultants, contractors, the usual. You know how that works. You're a lawyer. And former employers. And you know that the employer-employee relationship is very specific. It's actually laid out in quite detail and defined in the Trump Ethics Pledge. And it is true that if a former employer was a state or local government, this extended 2-year pledge under the Trump administration would not apply, and that official would default back to the default 1-year recusal. But if it was a former client, it is, any first-year law student can see, just by reading this document, it's a 2-year recusal. And Mr. Jorjani, I need to ask you why, on a recusal from Mr. Pendley, that you're copied on, presumably as the solicitor atop the legal apparatus at the Department of Interior you're responsible for at some level, there's only a 1-year recusal for these counties that I mentioned to you that were clients, not employers of this man. How do you explain that?
Thank you for the question. I did momentarily freeze when you referred to the first year of law school, which brought back a host of bad memories.
I really don't have a lot of time,
sorry.
Mr. Jorjani. I understand.
But the short version is, on the interpretation of the Trump Ethics Pledge, interpretation of 502, the relevant regs and statutes, I defer entirely to the designated agency ethics official and the alternate designated agency official, both who are nonpartisan career civil servants.
All right, so you're not responsible if they misapplied, clearly misapplied that provision, resulting in a 1-year shortening of a recusal pledge that was supposed to give us an assurance that ethics were serious for this administration? You're not responsible at any level?
I would welcome the opportunity to follow up on this very specific issue if you think we've misinterpreted the.
It won't take long to follow up. You just got to read the recusal. I got it right here. You're copied on it, so you've seen it before. And then you got to read 2 quick provisions in the Ethics Pledge. This is really clear-cut stuff. Now, I guess the question is, if this was misapplied and folks started making decisions, participating on matters that they should have been recused from, and we know they did, at least in the case of Mr. Bernhardt, who similarly gave himself a 1-year recusal for his former client, the Westlands Water District, was never his employer. He was a former client, should have been 2 years. He gave himself 1 year in the recusal and immediately started participating on matters pertaining to the Westlands Water District when that 1-year period was up, but he shouldn't have. And so the question, as solicitor of the Department of Interior, is what are you going to do about that? Are you willing to pledge to this committee that you'll go back and review all decisions, especially critical decisions that Mr. Bernhardt and potentially other officials have participated in where they should have been recused?
Thank you for the question. I take very seriously the ethics program in the U.S. Department of the Interior and have allocated significant resources to it. I think one of the best hires the Department of the
No narratives, sir. I asked for a specific pledge. If this was misapplied, if participation occurred when there should have been recusal, you're the solicitor of the Department of Interior. You going to do something about it?
Thank you for the question. I pride myself on working collaboratively with the designated agency ethics official. In your role as providing legitimate oversight of our executive branch agency, you've raised a legitimate issue. You've asked me to commit to go back to the DAO.
I know what I've asked you. The whole world knows what I just asked you. You don't need to repeat it. You're burning my time.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I commit to going back and sitting down with Scott Della Vega and Heather Gottry to go through Mr. Pendley's and Secretary Bernhardt's recusal agreement.
And any participation Mr. Bernhardt had on a specific matter or anything else involving Westlands between the 1-year and 2-year mark when he should have been recused, you're willing to report back to this committee on whether you think decisions are valid, whether there should be some remedial action, whether those actions can even stand, given that he should have been recused. Will you report back to this committee on that?
Out of an abundance of caution, you say specific matter. Are you referring to particular matters?
I'm referring to anything that you find should have been recused, but he did it because it was a 1-year when it should have been a 2-year. You know what I'm saying?
I think you've asked a legitimate question.
Thank you, sir. I yield back.